welcome everyone to this special edition of Generally Irritable. Fwah, fwah, fwah. Honey, we need to get the mixer thing set up.
Oh,
We need to get the mixer thing set up. Okay, let's
that's
see.
an easy fix.
Let's see. One of our destinations isn't working. All right, or the Rumble live stream isn't working.
I will deal with that.
I think I forgot to set it up ahead of time. Can you help me out with that?
I will look into that.
See if you can fix that. Hey guys, we're doing a live stream today. It's been a little while since we've done a live stream. Per usual, Benjamin says I need to just talk for a little while to fill in time and give time for folks to recognize that the live stream is going on, to hop in, and it's going down at the mall,
Wow.
at the club.
I'm surprised you got
It's going
that
down.
one.
I don't know why it's going down at the mall. So that was always one that I thought was like a weird choice for like thuggish music. It was like, yeah, it's going down.
You meet at the mall
at the
and
mall.
You spend a bunch of money at the mall. Like, you ball out.
Oh, that's the thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the whole thing.
All right. Well, we're having Eric Davis on today, you guys. We're talking about guns because, Benjamin and I are big 2A advocates. And we've got a lot of politicians these days trying to do gun grabs. We figured it was good timing with the New Mexico governor putting out a executive order or whatever it was to suspend gun rights because she thinks that she can do that for emergency health orders, which over the last few years they've determined they can get away with that nonsense. So I don't know why anybody's surprised that happened, but really seriously. But we're excited to have Eric Davis on today. We're going to be bringing him in. He is the director of Gun Owners of Vermont, talking to us about their suit against the state of Vermont for their unconstitutional gun laws from this year and from 2018. So that's going to be really exciting. We love talking about guns here on Generally Irritable. I'm excited to have Benjamin, a darker perspective, on here. How many gun groups are you a member of now? Like
It's at least USCCA, NRA, NAAGA, TSRA,
NAAGA, National African American Gun
Association.
Gun Association.
Gun Owners
So there's like, Texas State Rifle Association.
Yep.
That's one we're looking at joining as well. And so we're going to be talking about all of that stuff. And I'm sure the social medias are going to hate it.
Oh, yeah, pretty much.
We're seeing a lot of our creator friends being throttled. Their videos are getting throttled. They are being essentially hidden. So if you're watching this video right now, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Really importantly, share. I know the first part of these live streams are always annoying, but tell your friends, watch, listen later. They can skip through the first few minutes of us just blah, blah, blahing to get to the meat of the conversation. Because they are, the folks in charge are really trying to block these conversations. They want you to think you're alone. They want you to think that you're just some crazy conspiracy nut who, is all by yourself. But there are many, many of us out there. I've even got friends who are Democrats. I know it's shocking, but I've got friends who are Democrats who are not about this stuff. I have friends who are progressives, okay? Capital P, party member progressives who think that we should have universal health care, but they love their guns, okay? Because they know interestingly enough, progressives and conservatives, some progressives and conservatives, both understand that the government is not for you, and does not care about you. And
The stripper does not like you. She just wants your money.
whew, there's no sex in the champagne room. No sex in the champagne room. No sex in the champagne room. All right. Any
Wow.
luck with that, babe?
Think so.
All right, cool. All right. Let me see here. As you guys know, this is a live stream. It is participatory. So if you have any comments, put them in the comment section wherever you're watching. If you have any questions for Eric or Benjamin or I, put them in the comments section. You can ask live. We'll bring them up. We'll show them. We'll ask Eric and see what he thinks. So without further ado, and just so you guys know, we're going to bring him in. We had to cut the video to make sure we get good audio. Sometimes the internet just is, uncooperative, but we want to make sure we could hear good. So we've got this beautiful picture of Eric up. It really is him behind the scenes.
So let me do this. Boom.
All right. All right. Eric, are you there with us? Oh,
Did we lose him?
did we mute it? He's not muted, is he?
No.
Maybe he left and came back. Maybe he was like, you guys are talking so much smack, I'm going to go use the bathroom.
Oh,
Oh, I
hey,
heard
you
something.
guys there?
Yep.
There we
yeah.
go.
Boom.
There we go.
Hello.
All right, we
Hey,
can
all
hear
right,
you now.
you're back in a minute, yeah.
We can hear you now.
Oh, good.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's so funny. Eric, it's funny, you guys. Before we started the show, I was picking on him, and I said I don't know what's up with Vermonters when you tell them you need good high speed internet. They're like, whatever. And what did you say? Anything this
I
side
said
of
that
dial up?
means- yeah, anything this side of dial-up means high-speed internet up here. So,
There is so much of the state. I was actually, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but during my campaign last year, there is so much of Vermont that doesn't have any cell phone service. There's really like no or little internet to speak of. And it really is very rural. And once you get into the mountains, like trying to get a signal anywhere, just forget about it.
yeah, they've had politicians running on the platform of trying to fix that for, I don't know, 10, 15 years now, and nobody's been able to do it. But the folks that grew up here, we're used to it. You know what I mean? It's just normal life to us. We don't even notice it. But,
that's what I'm like. Don't people live in the country because they want to live in the country and they don't necessarily want all that stuff?
I think so. I mean, I like the nice peace and quiet and laid back lifestyle out here. That's me personally. But, like I said, the trade off for some of that is you don't always get the awesome amenities of the city. I mean, that's
oh,
that's the way it goes.
man.
So,
Why won't Google Fiber run out to Roxbury, those rat bastards? I love
town
it.
of 300 people, they won't service it. I don't know why.
Oh my God. Well, Eric, I'm just so grateful for you to come on. My first introduction to you, I think was that at a Libertarian Party meeting?
Yeah, yeah, there was some event the LP did in Barrie, which is kind of next door to my hometown. They asked me to speak on gun rights about. I think we met there. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
A few years ago now. Yeah,
that's what I was like. Who's this guy? I like him. I have really appreciated. I just want to start out by saying thank you for your service. Thank you for. Leading the group Gun Owners of Vermont. And
I appreciate it. That's good to hear that a gun rights lobbyist is not the most popular thing to be in some circles, depending on who you're talking to. So,
well, and you're so clear and you're so articulate, and you really command a presence in the room, and it just makes you want to listen. And so I just wanted to first start by thanking you for being this like really rational voice in the room about it all, and being able to clearly articulate what we believe without it having to sound, because sometimes, those of us that are gun nuts sound like gun nuts, but
right, yeah.
you do it with so much grace. It's really astonishing. It's
Thanks.
really remarkable.
I appreciate that. That's great to hear, and that's honestly when I became a quote unquote activist. I guess that was sort of one of the reasons that I got into it was I felt that the pro gun rights side of the argument wasn't being really accurately represented, just because a lot of these guys just couldn't really put into words what we feel and know, and how we've how we view this issue. But we do the best we can, and that's ultimately that's exactly what I try to do is be the voice of reason in the conversation, and try to not let it devolve into partisan bickering and talking points and the typical mudslinging that you see so much
Nonsense.
of nowadays. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. We got Robert B. Chernin watching. He says 2A rights are human rights. You are correct, sir. You are correct, sir. Robert is the host of another show that I help produce and co-host called Of the People with Robert Chernin. So we're on the radio in New Hampshire. We got the podcast, and Robert is also like Benjamin with his swords in the background, a big 2A advocate, also a weapons advocate, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. So Robert was what was Benjamin? Do you remember what martial art he's a black belt in?
I forget. The thing was a version of karate.
It's karate, right? And so I want to see Robert walking down the street with those. What's the two swords in the back? What does that show come from?
You talking about One Piece?
No.
Two swords in the back?
Yeah,
Ninja
yeah.
Turtles? What are you talking about?
No. Who is it that has two swords in the back?
Turtle.
With the red
I
and
don't know.
with the red and black jacket.
Deadpool.
Yeah, or somebody like that.
It's Deadpool or Deathstroke.
Oh. Anyway, never mind. Forget it.
You are silly.
Anyway, I just want to see Robert dressed up in his gi with some swords. Is all I'm saying. Like walking around town. I can totally visualize it. So Eric, tell our viewers, in just a few words, for those folks who are not familiar, tell folks, what is Gun Owners of Vermont? What are you guys about? What's your relationship to the Sportsman's Club? Mm-hmm. And because I know it's you, so the reason we're having you on today, which I shouldn't bury the lead, y'all are suing the state of Vermont for their unconstitutional gun laws from 2018 and 2023. So tell everybody a little bit about Gun Owners of Vermont, and then your relationship to the Sportsman's Club, and then we'll get into your suit.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, Gun Owners Vermont was started in the late 1990s, around 1997. And we're an all-volunteer, nonprofit advocacy group that's dedicated to the preservation of the right to keep and bear arms. And we pride ourselves, we actually bill ourselves on being one of the only no-compromise gun rights organizations, where we very firmly believe that all gun control is unconstitutional and goes against our what we believe in, and we do our best.
So I can have my tank. So I can have a tank. You're okay with me having a tank?
I think that's reasonable. Yeah.
All right, cool. Okay, keep going.
So basically, like I said, we're all volunteer. We're very small, and it was kind of just started by a disgruntled group of guys that noticed that every major piece of gun control legislation that gets passed in this country, usually has the NRA floating somewhere around it, and they usually they start out with oh no, we're not going to do that, and then they compromise on it, and we
Mm.
always said that the compromise is surrender on the installment plan. You start out with, but no, then you keep compromising your rights away until you're wound up with nothing, and that's part of the strategy of the other side. So we bill ourselves as being a no compromise gun rights organization. And we raise money to do lobby work in Montpelier and do some legal advocacy work, which is what's happening here. You mentioned the lawsuit. The actual plaintiffs in the lawsuit are the Vermont Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs. They're kind of like the big umbrella group that all the other sort of advocacy groups fall under.
Okay.
And we are sort of assisting them financially and administratively, and how we're sort of a sister organization to the federation. They're the
Okay.
big tent, and we're sort of the they do like hunting and fishing and trapping and conservation and all that stuff, and we're sort of just guns. So
Got it.
but obviously, whenever they pass laws restricting 2A rights, that's right up our
Affects
alley.
everybody.
So we're going to be heavily involved in that. So so it's a collaborative effort. There's a lot of different advocacy groups, local and national, that have sort of signed on to this effort. And a lot of this similar stuff happening in other states. A lot of lawsuits have been filed since the Bruin ruling last year, and the judicial landscape around gun rights kind of changed with that. So there's been a lot of legal work going on for the last year or so.
So, can you tell me, have you, how long have you been involved with Gun Owners of Vermont? And specifically, I'm wondering, how long have you been kind of like an activist, in Montpelier, kind of dealing with folks there? I'm setting
Okay,
you
so,
up for another
yeah.
question, just so you know.
Okay, so yeah, all right. So I guess I've been involved as an activist directly for about 4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
I've always been a gun guy. Always always enjoyed shooting and recreating. I tell folks that back when 7.62 by 3.9 AK ammo was $40 a case, we used to go through a case of it every week. We used to just stand up in the woods and shoot off into the trees and stuff. Like, that was normal. And if you're a gun person, if you're an enthusiast, if you're into that stuff, it doesn't take you very long to figure out that you're by default a political person, because it's a very political issue, right? So whether you want to be or not. And so that kind of just evolved into me being kind of a argumentative type, started writing op-eds and arguing online and stuff. And I sort of got sucked into the activist role. But yeah, it's been about 5 years now that I've been
Okay.
really into this
So,
stuff.
one of the things that I've been so curious about is, in a state like ours that has this deep, deep culture of gun enthusiasts, right? So, whether it's in the Revolutionary War, they said, send the Vermonters first, or it's, folks like you and I who grew up, I learned how to shoot a gun when I was like 6, right? So
Yep.
it's so entrenched in our culture. When did, my understanding is that essentially a bunch of outside, out of state money started flowing into Vermont, around 2017, 2016 or so, and started advocating these gun grabs. I call them gun grabs. Other people call them gun laws, whatever. Tomato, tomato. And I'm curious if you were already, if there was already a movement toward trying to restrict guns in Vermont before 2018, or if this is all just like Bloomberg money. Like, how does the safest state in the union become a battleground for these outrageous unconstitutional gun laws?
That's a great question, and I think the answer to that, I think it has a lot to do with how partisan the discussion has become. Vermont has become a very blue state over the years. I grew up here. I'm 42. I graduated in 1999, the same year the Columbine massacre happened.
Yep.
And even back then, gun control was never even up for discussion. It was never even on the table. And you go back even as far as like the 60s and 70s when all the states, individually started passing laws restricting the carrying of firearms openly or concealed or whatever. Vermont never did that. Vermont never required a permit to carry a gun openly or concealed for residents or visitors or anything. And a lot of the states that are going back to that now, you hear it called constitutional carry. For years, it was called Vermont carry because we were the only state to never restrict the carrying of firearms. No joke. And it was great for years and decades. We were the gold standard for gun rights. There was no regulation, absolutely zero, and almost no violence or crime or anything up here. And you say you argue you guys are way out in the sticks, and all right, I'll give you that. But still, there was this culture of sort of I don't know, like a neighborly sort of collective responsibility to one or another, where like that sort of stuff just didn't happen around here. And
right.
Then, and I remember when Columbine happened. Like I said, I was a senior in high school, and everybody was like, "Oh my God," you hear about shootings and stuff, but like that was the first like school shooting that was like nationally, televised.
Yeah.
And
my cousin
stuff. Yeah.
and my cousins were in high school in Littleton, Colorado. Gratefully, not at Columbine, but yeah. So I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that time period vividly.
Yeah. So that happened, and honestly, back in that time, I really was like I was kind of into guns, but not like I was now. And then shortly after that, you had the Bush administration. And the sunset ban, the sunset of the Clinton era assault weapons ban.
Yep.
And then, you started hearing more sort of yapping from the other side about, oh, this is bad. We can't let yap. And that, sort of, continued at a, I guess, a dull roar in the background, until I think Newtown was really the turning point, especially in Vermont. And I remember when that happened, I heard it on the news. I went, "Oh my God, they're going to come after him now." This all bets are off. You get 21st graders massacred in the classroom. I mean, good Lord, you got everybody. You got to do something, right? And that's what does everybody go for? The guns first thing, right? So so that's really when it started in Vermont with folks like Senator Baruth, who always kind of didn't like the gun culture and kind of kept it under his hat because it wasn't really socially acceptable to talk bad about guns. Now all of a sudden you have this tragedy in your back pocket that you can say, look at this, we need to do something about this. And that's where it started. And by that time,
and by that time, the legislature was already heavily progressive, heavily blue. Chittenden County has, had the, was already wildly overrepresented. So you've got, so it sounds like it was basically like timing wise, we already had this progressive move in and takeover of our legislature at the same time as some of these more
the progressive
sensational
takeover,
tragedies happened.
I was going to say the Vermont turning blue has been happening for a long time. I remember, I talked about around 99, 2000. I don't know if you guys remember the Take Back Vermont movement. When
Yes.
Vermont was the first to do the civil unions and stuff. And there
Yes.
was a lot of, conservatives that were like, didn't really have a problem with it per se. We're like, God, why do we got to be the first one? And there was that sort of, division kind of started back in that red versus blue sort of resentment.
Yep.
It kind
I
of
remember
it
that.
built on that. And looking back on that, I'll be honest with you, I was part of the Take Back Vermont movement, and looking back, I can look back and say, you know what, I was on the wrong side of that. I had that messed up, and a lot of folks in this state are sort of the same way. We're very socially liberal, but still just kind of want to be left alone to a certain extent too.
Correct.
And if you remember in 2013, actually, they had a supermajority. They had a Democratic-controlled House, Senate, and Peter Shumlin was the governor.
Yep.
And they still didn't. They still did not pass gun control that year. They said, "No, we're not going to do it. We're not going to vote on it." And the more polarized and the more partisan the issue became, the more emboldened they've become. And then when Phil Scott came out in 2018, quote unquote Republican governor, and said,
Republican.
we need to do something, then it was like the floodgates just flew open at that point. And they're now they said, okay, there's no repercussions. You're not voting any of these people out. We're just going to do whatever we want. And,
Yeah.
I think everybody in this show
And
knows
now
that's
it's
not
been-
how rights work. They're not up for a popular vote, right? You know what I mean?
At least you would think not, but
Well,
unfortunately,
yeah.
unfortunately, you have to go through the court system to prove it, which is a conversation for a whole other show.
Sure.
So I know now 2018 was, let's see, there was the red flag laws, the mag ban. What else passed in 2018?
Okay, so
trying to remember.
2018, they were talking about doing the red flag law, and that was like they were really nervous even bringing that subject up. And honestly, that bill was dead on the wall. That wasn't going to go anywhere until the incident with that kid that texted his girlfriend about how he was planning to shoot up the school.
Yep.
And then, oh, holy goodness, that red flag bill flew through the legislature, passed unanimously, bipartisan, everybody voted for it, sailed right through. And on top of that, they passed S55, which was the notorious, alphabet soup of gun control that they did, which was the mag ban, 21-year age limit, bump stock ban, and universal background checks. So no more private person-to-person gun transfers without a background check.
Right.
So that was their big wish list of things back then. And, of course, you gun nuts are so unreasonable. Why won't you just accept these little bit of restrictions out? And what do you know? The ink wasn't dry on Scott's signature before they were rolling out their list of demands for next year. Now we want this.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just like we said was going to happen. It's weird. And, but that's, that's the cycle that we're in now.
So just starting out with that first set of gun laws back from 2018. Now that was when I moved back to Vermont after not having lived in the state for about 8 or 10 years, right? So I grew up a Vermonter, right? I mean, I've got it tattooed on my body, for God's sake. Proud Vermonter. And I tell people when the only people who are as fiercely prideful about where they're from are Vermonters and Texans.
Texas
I swear to God.
Baby. Texas Neanderthals. Pure bloods.
Oh my God. You are so dumb. So do we know now? I know the first person who got sucked into the red flag law circumstance. They had if I recall correctly, it was like a property dispute with the neighbor. I think I could be misquoting. So SP, you're gonna have to give me crap. I won't say the name because I don't know how much he cares about having his name, brought up in the public again. But his neighbor reported him for the red flag law. He was just being vindictive, and then he had to go fight with his own money, with his own lawyers to get his guns back to clear his name. So do we know of any other circumstances, do you know off the top of your head, where these laws have been misused to hurt people in the state of Vermont? Anything that's top of mind?
That specific instance comes to mind. There was another incident, and the folks involved, almost we tried to get a hold of them after it happened. It was almost like they kind of didn't want the attention, but where some kids got talking about they were going to do something at school or something. I don't remember the story, but the kid's plan was to go steal a gun from his uncle's house, and they went to the uncle's house and took the uncle's guns, who was a complete third party, didn't even have anything to do with this. But the kid said, I'm going to go steal a gun from my uncle and do this. So they got a red flag order and went to, and I think there was a little bit of the uncle kind of didn't want to make waves and sort of went along with it a little bit. I don't think they dug their heels in really, because they didn't fully understand the repercussions and the gravity of what's going on, and you know how people, with the news and everything, all you hear about is these shooting, oh geez, they're just trying to help, and I want to, so I think they kind of went along with it, and the guy ended up getting his guns back and everything, from what I understand.
Oh, good.
But we really wanted to use them as a plaintiff in a lawsuit to say, look how this law has been abused, and they they weren't up for it. But
Wow.
there have been incidents in other states. There was a guy down in New Jersey a few years ago, kind of an eccentric fella, little bit, not a bad guy or anything, just a little weird, and got kind of animated and excited about something, and his family called, and the cops showed up, and they ended up shooting the guy and killing him. Yeah, it was very terrible.
Oh my God.
Yep. But that stuff happens, I mean, that's the flip side of that coin when you want to start, arresting,
messing
and
around,
punishing people before something happens, for thought crime or whatever. Then that's that can of worms that you open up. And
well, and I've been curious, even what was it, Benjamin? How many shots is it that they say that you need to take down an intruder? What's the average number? Do you remember that? We were listening to that the other day.
I don't remember, but it's going to be at least 5 or 6.
Jump on YouTube, and you can see videos of guys all hopped up on crystal meth taking 20 from a cop and still keep running it. I mean, there's,
that's what something I think it was, we were watching a video by Colion Noir, or one of those big time YouTube gun rights people. And, or maybe were we listening to John Lott? We were listening to something. And the person said, I think it was an average of 5 or 6 shots to take down a threat. And so when you have a mag ban, right, you can't have a 30 more than 10 rounds or whatever. And so if you have multiple assailants or people trying to attack you, and then you have folks like Joe Biden being like, just go outside with your shotgun and
go on your porch.
Does
and
anybody
point it up
actually
in the air.
listen to him? Yeah, I mean,
just
good Lord.
go on your porch and illegally just shoot rounds up
into the air.
Yeah,
Don't shoot the people. Yeah. So it's
then you can face your intruder with an empty shotgun. Good job, Joe. Thank you. Nice.
So it's this is what these gun rules don't take into consideration reality. So Vermont decides to ban 30-round mags because, they're big and scary. But that's actually what you would need if you hoped to actually defend yourself against multiple intruders.
I own all different kinds of guns. I'm an enthusiast, right? And I tell everybody my wife's favorite gun to shoot is the AR-15 because there's 3 points of contact. It's light. She can hit targets with it.
Brace.
She's got 30 rounds in case she misses. And of course, in a gunfight, good Lord forbid, if I'm not around and she has to defend my family, she's going to be scared to deth and probably going to miss the guy with the first half of the match. I hope she has 100 rounds in the thing. Good Lord.
Oh my gosh.
Why on earth would you want your family to be, unable to defend themselves? I don't understand. But
I'm reading this core thing, and it's saying, I don't know if this is accurate, but it sounds about right. It says there have been instances where police have had to shoot a guy that was on drugs over 15 times before he stopped his attack. But according to the FBI, the average civilian deadly force encounter is 3 to 5 shots fired.
That's what it was.
But hits are what matter. So the thing is, I've watched gangsters at 7 feet, and they're just one-handed and hitting. Look, they hit 50 Cent like 7 times. That dude's around making records. I don't want to tell you.
Oh yeah.
So
well, Brian in the chat says, "Shoot him in the leg." Of course, that famous quote, like, "Oh my God, it's hard enough to hit center mass, let alone somebody's legs while they're moving."
How many people actually believe that though? And it just highlights how much these people don't know about firearms. I mean, and how are you supposed to have a serious conversation? Like, how am I supposed to talk about concealed carry with somebody who's never fired a gun in their life? You know what I mean?
Dude,
honestly,
did you?
Come on, guy.
Oh my God, yeah. Who's the chick? Who's the chick from Texas? The representative from Texas. Oh my God.
50 boxes.
Oh, I held it, unfortunately, and it weighs as much as 50 boxes that you might carry, and it shoots.
These guys are straight out of the comic book, man. I swear to God, it's like I have no idea how people take politicians seriously. I really don't.
They're just saying stuff.
It shoots 50 caliber bullets. I was like, what?
No,
Sheila Jackson Lee.
Look, the thing is that's amazing about people like in the Senate and stuff is like, okay, or House or whatever, doesn't matter, all of them. They talk about guns and they don't know anything about guns.
Nothing.
And I'm like,
Nothing.
this is the age of the internet, right? This isn't like the 90s where you could have said it and somebody was going to write an op-ed on why you're stupid, no one was going to read it. We're going to make memes out of you. We're going to do video remixes to the foolishness that you say. That's my next video edit right now. I'm working on a stupid people talking about guns video. I'm like, you guys are saying things that are verifiable. You're lying. You're not just mistaken. You've been briefed on this. You can look this up. You're either lying or you're willfully stupid. And that is upsetting because you're in leadership.
It's 100% correct, man. And I'm glad. I'll give you a case in point example. This happened when they passed the waiting period bill this year. It had a provision for safe storage, they called it, where, if you don't keep your guns locked up and something happens, there's penalties and et cetera, et cetera. Now, anybody who follows this subject at all will be able to point to 2008 in the District of Columbia versus Heller, which was a Supreme Court case which specifically dealt with the law in D.C. that said that you had to keep your gun locked up and rendered inoperable in your own home. And the Supreme Court struck it down. They said, no, you can't do that. That violates your right to keep and bear arms. You cannot mandate that people keep their guns locked up in their own home, right? This is 2008, and this is the Supreme Court that said that. Okay. So this is still on their wish list, and you have this liberal legislature in Vermont, which sees the Supreme Court as a conservative entity to, thumb their nose at. So they write up this safe storage bill. And all the gun lobby goes in and says, guys, can't do that. DC versus Heller, 2008, Supreme Court says you can't do that. And they go, oh, yeah. Geez, well, we really want to. So they bring in their attorney general, who's the newly elected Democrat, so-and-so from Chittenden County, who's been a lawyer for I don't know how long or whatever.
5 minutes.
Nice young girl in her late 30s-ish, I would expect. And she comes in and she says, oh, it's probably constitutional. You guys can go ahead and pass it. And they went, oh, okay. And they passed it. Just like that. They just get somebody from their side to tell them what they want to hear. And they go, okay, good enough. And, we're
Well,
let the
and this
court
is
sort it out.
and there and
Yep.
see this is what happens in Vermont. And this is why I've been so disappointed with the degradation of the legal system in Vermont. Get me started. But the what they do is they pass the thing that they know is unconstitutional, and it stays there until and unless somebody has the money, resources, and desire, or whatever, to sue them, right? Like, it'll
And
stand unless you take them to court.
initial estimates for the lawsuit that the Federation is filing that we're helping out with, to get this through the Circuit Court of Appeals, we figure is going to take somewhere around $300,000 to start with. It costs close to $1 million to get a case to the Supreme Court. Now, remember,
Wow.
while we were out raising money and shaking our little donation jars and going, please, guys, kick us a couple bucks so we can fight the state is fighting us with our money. They have an army of lawyers that are paid for with our tax dollars.
That's
and
right.
They don't care how long it takes. They'll pass all the bad laws, and there's no repercussions. And if the court throws it out, and they go, "Oh, geez,
Yes.
oh well," and they'll pass
Yes.
another one for us to fight.
Yep.
And until there are repercussions, i.e., some of these politicians getting charged with perjury for violating your oath of office, you swear an oath to uphold the
Ooh.
Constitution and defend
Yes.
it, right? And then you advance bills which are directly contradictory to the Constitution. I mean, that sounds like perjury to me. But when you're the party that controls everything, good luck, getting somebody to bring charges for that.
Well,
so it's
and I know of at least 3 cases, one of which was personal for Benjamin and I. I know of at least 3 cases that went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, in their opinion, acknowledged that whatever was happening was in fact illegal or unlawful or whatever, but we're going to let it stand anyway. We're not actually going to defend your rights or stand up for you. We're going to let the municipality have supremacy.
that's insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
so
don't know.
when
But the thing is, and as Eric said, and up until you get to that point, you have to waste your money on 2 accounts because they're using your money to fight you the entire time you're doing that.
Exactly.
The whole time you're doing that.
Brian said it's treason. Is that actually, if you get elected and you swear an oath to the Constitution, could it be considered treason? Like, what is treason?
I don't know. I don't
Treason.
have the definition of treason in front of me, but I mean, you would think that there would be some sort of repercussions for people that continually advance bills which have been ruled unconstitutional on multiple. I mean, you should be barred from holding office. I mean, for goodness sake, it shouldn't be allowed to be a dog catcher if you're doing something like that. But treason, I don't know. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, so hold on.
until,
So before hold on.
there's
Before
some
we go any
repercussions for
further,
that. Case in point, the governor of New Mexico decided to arbitrarily suspend concealed carry, and she's it's not going to stand, but there's not going to be any repercussions for it. So it's going to set a precedent that these other activist governors and legislatures are going to continue to try to do the same
trying
thing.
to do
because,
some nonsense.
because nothing happens when you do.
So hold on. So before we go any further, Eric, where can people go to donate to the legal fund? How can they send you money? How can they participate? Let's make sure we mention that a few times during this podcast.
Yep,
Where can they? How do
absolutely.
they do it?
Absolutely. So if you go to our website, it's www.gunownersofvermont.org, and there's going to be a bar at the top that says join us and donate, and there's a little drop down thing. So you can either join us as a regular paid member. I think it's like $25 a year to be a member, or you can just donate, whatever you want to our legal defense fund, which helps us fight some of this stuff out in court. It's a good thing to do. And we also encourage you to support the Vermont Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs as well. Like I said, they're the ones that are actually, they're the big tent that's kind of administering this whole thing, and we're helping out with it. But, I tell everybody that, the old saying that all politics are local, right? So if you're gonna join your advocacy groups, join your local ones, your state ones, and your federal ones in that order, right? Because that's where the battle's at. The federal government is is so dysfunctional that that's one of the silver linings of it is they can't get anything done. One of those things is gun control. So thank God, but but the battle is definitely in the States. So join your local advocacy groups, get involved. If you can't donate money, donate your time, help somebody run for office. Go to a rally, anything. It's
make phone calls, door knock.
It is. It's tough because gun rights activists are very libertarian type that kind of just want to be left alone and go about their business, and
and so they get left alone and then don't do anything.
Right, and it's when I started going to Montpelier, Evan Hughes, God rest his soul, from the Federation, was a longtime lobbyist there. He told me, he says, "You're either at the table or you're on the table, and the choice is up to you." He said, it's absolutely true. Is they're going to have their way with you over there if you don't step up and get involved, and at least show an interest in what's going on. They're just going to do whatever they want.
So what else got passed this year?
Okay, so this year was the 72-hour waiting period. So any firearm that you buy, as soon as your background check comes back, okay, that starts the clock at 72 hours from that point before you can pick up your gun. And if you followed that in other states, it starts out at 72, and then they keep adding time to it every year until you're like California, where it's like a month before you can get your gun.
Freaking week. Yeah, that's stupid. Okay.
So they passed that, and they passed the safe storage thing that I was talking about. They kind of watered it down a little bit, so there's the wording is more like liability for negligence or something, like if you leave your gun laying around and something happens, and you can be held liable up to a certain extent. But it's better than it was when they started out, but it's still problematic, and I think it still runs afoul of the Heller decision personally. But they did that, and they expanded the ERPO, or red flag law. ERPO stands for Extreme Risk Protection Order, where you guys touched on that. If somebody thinks that you're dangerous, a threat to yourself or someone else, they can lobby the courts to have the cops come take your guns away before you even get a hearing about it. This can happen. They'll just show up and take them, without you even knowing what's going on.
Oh my gosh.
It
is absolutely out of control. Vermont legislature is absolutely out of control, out of its mind.
Yep.
Out of its mind.
Yep.
Total side note, Michael Valdez asks, what's your thoughts on Vermont's possible doing background checks on ammo like New York?
Well, I'll tell you, there's our previous Attorney General, T.J. Donovan, who he didn't run again last cycle, but he signed on to a letter of 16 other attorney generals in blue states like that, asking the federal government to pass that law for background checks on ammo. Sort of a political grandstanding kind of move. Obviously wasn't going to go anywhere federally, but I think if given the opportunity, I think nothing is off the table to these people here in Vermont now, especially now that they've been a few election cycles without any repercussions. I think you're going to see more and more crazy stuff just thrown at the wall every year until it starts changing.
So here's my question. We're going to digress for just a moment.
Okay.
So do they just think like nobody? Okay. Let me see if I can I'm going to try to make this quick. So not only should we not have guns as the citizenry because, we're dopes and can't be trusted, but also the cops are a bunch of racists and, terrible human beings. So, like Burlington can't even have a SWAT team. They have to have an emergency response team, right? So we want to get rid of the cops who would defend us if there was a problem. We want to make it so you can't defend yourself. So but the criminals are still here. Yeah. Like, what?
And there's more of them all of a sudden. What do you know? It's weird.
Right? Like,
so weird. weird when you don't enforce laws and you disarm the populace. The criminals show up. Wow.
Yeah, and like, you know, we had the armed robber on the loose. I think he
Yeah.
still is in
you know-
the freaking new north end of Burlington.
You know why? Because you don't have a SWAT team.
They were afraid to shoot him because they were like,
Well,
oh, we're gonna get in trouble.
They got a SWAT
I think,
team,
you know,
not a SWAT team.
we joke around about this, and it seems, you know, obvious at face value to anybody that cares to think about it. But I think, you know, we're really into something here, even on a deeper level, that, you know, when you pass these sort of laws that and look at, I don't know, life and society through the lens that the progressives do, it's almost like you cultivate this air of irresponsibility where you're telling everybody, look, you're not responsible for your bad behavior. You can come up here and act a fool and shoot the place up and rob everybody, and we're going to blame your upbringing. We're going to blame the cops. We're going to blame the system. We're going to blame the guns. We're going to blame these poor dumb rednecks up here in Vermont that don't have anything, you know, but it's going to be everybody's fault but yours. And I have always said right along that the violence epidemic in this country, it's just like the obesity epidemic or the heroin epidemic. It's a byproduct of the irresponsibility epidemic where people have been conditioned to this mindset that you're not responsible for the consequences of your actions or for your own decisions. You know, it used to be, you know, that these sort of behaviors had very serious life-altering consequences, and now it's, you know, we'll just step in and make it okay, you know, and you can screw it up as bad as you want, and nobody cares. So
that's how you breed weak. That's how you breed weak people. Lack of consequences and responsibility.
Well, and more to the point, we're just creating more victims, which is weird. So if everyone is just a victim, which is why they behave bad, right? Like, we're all born perfect as driven snow, and we're just made into these buttholes by life and circumstances, but then we allow people to run around making more victims, thereby, I guess, just everybody now is a butthole, and so then we're cool.
Well, it's not only that, they've glorified the victim mentality. I mean, victimhood is something to be achieved now instead of avoided. It's, you know, there's been like this whole inversion of social principles where, you
virtue.
Know, it's all,
it's an inversion of virtue.
Yeah, good. That's a good way to put it.
It used to be the saying was glory follows virtue as if it were its shadow. Now it's like glory follows perversion,
mediocrity, or perversion. Yeah, it's awful, man. You're absolutely right. That's a good way to put it.
But here's something here's something I actually heard that was interesting. They said, I don't know if this is true, so you can fact check me, freaking YouTube, whatever. I heard someone say that when in socialist and communist countries, when they take over, they released prisoners from the prisons, the criminals, because then they go out and they do crime stuff, and then you need the state to come in and to save and rescue you. So it's like a manufactured crisis.
Yep.
So
What?
So if you think about it, if their ultimate aim is to get guns out of our hands to make us a pliable populace, right? What better way than to do that than to let crime proliferate and then blame it on the thing you have to take out of our hands? Weapons, firearms, we can't defend ourselves or resist the state. You've washed many of your police forces of patriots because you've enforced them. You forced them to get things they didn't want to get, to do things they didn't want to do. So you're getting rid of all the people that wouldn't be bootlickers. And so now you're left, to a large extent in many organizations, with just those people who drones of the state, who are the boots of the state, right? And then you have a government who's been trying all these things, poking at the edges to see what we'll give, where we'll fold, where we'll crumple, while enforcing the socialist and type, agendas. I hesitate to give anybody that level of credit, but they have been far too effective at moving an agenda along. That's all I'm saying.
Why else would Sarah George not prosecute gun crimes while at the same time support gun control?
Well, one of my favorite sayings is that let me make sure I get this right. This is
That is a
never
great.
never attribute to conspiracy that which can be easily explained by stupidity.
Is that
So I think you might be giving Sarah George a little much credit. That's just my personal opinion, but you're spot on that fear is the number one
the mind
motivating is the number one tool that governments use to seize individual rights and more control. You're absolutely 100%
no,
correct on that.
I think you just pulled out. I believe that was Hanlon's razor, right?
Hanlon's razor, yes sir.
Tribute to
Yeah.
malice, which could
Yeah.
be stupidity. But here's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. But who put George in office?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
that the drones, the NPCs taking the download, right, are the ones that are the masterminds. But whoever's pulling these strings and making this stuff happen, there is no way that this is all accidental. It's too much coordination. And for all my people out there who talk about reasonableness when it comes to guns, like I used to be on the side of being reasonable 10 years ago, and then I heard certain things. I thought people were being, oh, those conservatives, those Republicans are being, wow, those libertarians, they're going too far. And then I waited 10 years, and I saw the things that they were talking about come to fruition, where that they took an inch, then a mile, then a kilometer. And so when they talk about, anytime they talk about guns, and they talk about, we just got to get rid of the assault rifles, right? Because they don't know what the ARB stands for. Anytime that we get rid of those scary rifles, you have
The
to think to
black
yourself,
ones.
You have to
They're
think
scary.
what percentage of crime is actually perpetrated by a semi-automatic rifle? What percentage of crime is actually perpetrated? It's a very small percentage of the crime.
Yeah.
Most deaths come at I think they say more people get stabbed and beaten to death with hands than get killed with rifles.
With rifles, period. Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
but that's part of the plan. They know once it's the scary looking black guns, then it'll be all semi-automatic guns, and then it'll be then it'll be sniper rifles, because nobody needs to shoot up to 600 yards. And what do you think a sniper rifle is going to be? It's going to be anything with a scope on it. It's going to be your daggum deer rifle, for goodness sake. You know? And then it's going to be well, nobody needs a handgun. Nobody needs to conceal a gun like that. And the majority of deaths come with handguns, and and those are the ones that we really need to ban. And then it's going to be shotguns, because nobody needs that much close range stopping power. You could blow a hole the size of a dinner plate in an intruder. Why do you need a 12
blow the lung? Oh, you blow the lungs right out of the body.
They're so predictable. It's just not even funny. But but I think a better point that I like to try to make is that Ben touched on a small percentage of crimes occur with rifles, et cetera, et cetera. Your right to keep and bear arms doesn't come into and go out of existence with the violent crime rate or the suicide rate or anything else. It's not a function of that. Okay, you are born with this right, and this is if I could summarize our entire position, I tell people this. I said, look, you have a right to your life and to yourself, right? Okay, so therefore you have a natural right to protect your life, okay? And that implies a right to access the means with which to do so. It would be like if you had a right to speak freely, but only to an approved audience about an approved subject, and the speech was pre-written for you. Okay, it's not a right at all. It's a cruel joke, right? So if you don't have the right to access the means with which to defend yourself, which in modern times is a firearm, and immediately do so whenever you need one without having to ask permission from the government first, that is infringement, period. I mean,
all right. So, I think we can end the show right there. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
No, what you just said was something I've been wrestling with as well, because I was watching all the debates about Second Amendment. People talk about what was that dude's name? Ian, what's his name? Ian Land? What's that guy? The rebirth democracy. What was his name again?
Oh, Liam Madden.
Liam, when he was talking about I should be the person. When he was saying who should tell people who could have a rifle and who couldn't, and blah 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 blah. Like he was like someone like him. The
it's going to be up to you, okay, buddy.
Yeah, the state.
But check it out, right? But here's the part that really gets me, and I tell people this. I ask them all the time when they say, "Oh, the government." I believe in some laws. I'm like, well, do you think the government Do you trust the government? No. Then why would you give them the right to modulate what you could use to potentially have to resist them? Does that make a lot of sense? And people talk about the Second Amendment and the militia and all those sorts of conversations. Here's the problem with that: God-given rights, right? That's the whole point of the rights in the first place. These are God-given, regardless of what you believe. It means we had them from birth, right? They pre-exist everything.
They pre-exist
right?
government.
These are natural. We have what Erica says.
Natural rights.
But we have a negative rights bill, which means basically we're talking about what the government cannot do against our pre-existing rights.
You have rights against law. Yes.
They are
Correct.
not granting us the rights to the Second Amendment. We already had that. So if that's the case, what does a militia have to do with a right that pre-exists the government itself? How can you say it can only use this weapon in the service or at the behest of a militia when the rights, by their very definition, are God-given and have to pre-exist the militia and the government?
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's a fantastic point, man. You're right, and folks don't care to think about it like that. And you know, it's funny you bring up that militia argument. Is you hear that, you know, from the other side, and it always gets rolled out different depending on what they're talking to. You have a right to own a gun, but only in a militia. And by the way, we passed a bill that says militias aren't allowed to exist in Vermont this year. So, like, how stupid do you think we are, man? You know?
That's pretty slick.
They think we're really stupid. They really think that we're stupid. They don't. I don't think they think we're stupid. I think they think we just won't do anything.
I think we're lazy.
The Vermonters. This is what a lady that I know from a different group of folks, that a different nonprofit that I work with, her words specifically were, because she's from Virginia, she said Vermonters are uniquely willing to be tyrannized.
Ooh, that's yeah.
Because
that's a clip.
You know,
people will not show up. Because people will not show up to defend their rights. They just don't show up. They don't participate.
That is so crazy spot on. It's just not even funny. I mean, for such an independent, like, cantankerous bunch of people up here. I mean, we just like, I swear. I mean, empathy is killing the gun rights movement in Vermont, because a lot of these folks are just, heck, they're just going to keep coming in there, whatever. I'm not going to listen to them anyway. Well, it's, maybe you won't, but by the time your kids are old enough to realize, they're not going to know that you ever even had these rights. They're not going to know that you could go to your neighbor's house and sell a hunting rifle across the kitchen table, and that's normal.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You used to be able to buy a Thompson submachine gun from the Sears and Roebuck catalog, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? Like, your grandparents could do that. And if you mention that to people nowadays, they go, "Oh my God, are you out of your mind?" But that's the progressive creeping control that they just it's like death by paper cut. Just one little bit at a time.
But I want to circle back to something because it's related to what I'm seeing in the comments here as well. One thing I always think about when people talk about gun rights is we're going to ban all guns. And I'm like, well, okay, let's just say you even planned on doing that. What are you going to do about the border? See, gun runners are still going to cross. A gun runner is a job. I don't think people understand it. That's like an actual thing.
That's not just like it's something that they call people in movies.
It's a whole thing. Go watch some Sons of Anarchy if you need some education.
And you guys have a unique perspective on that, being from Texas. Like, up in Vermont, like, nobody knows anything about the border up here. They're like, there's a border. We think
we have a border,
right?
We're a border state. Like, oh my
God! You're like there are Canadians coming down here. I tell you.
But here's the thing. But the thing about all that is that whenever people say, "I'm like, great, well, how do you feel about closing borders?" You can't have an open border and then black market weapons. The criminals are just going to buy the guns from people who cross the border. That's all that's going to happen because it's a new market for them to sell. Like, it's. Yeah, that's a common sense.
There's a saying I read the other day, and I wish I could find the quote to see who said it, but it was something about when goods and money can't cross borders, eventually armies will.
Ooh.
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 It's
Appreciate that, Brian.
Ooh. Ooh.
Wow.
Okay, so Eric, so let me ground us back down here a little bit.
No.
We're
I'm sorry.
getting off in the weeds
Wait.
here,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. I wanted to bring it back to something you said. I'm sorry. So that whole thing we're talking about, not enforcing border laws, would interfere with their ability to do all the gun stuff. Not to mention whether or not all this gun stuff they're trying to pass is constitutional, which it's not. Which brings us back to what Brian Elbrader says: the Constitution requires both concrete action and intent to betray the nation before a citizen can be convicted of treason. Expressing traitorous thoughts or intentions alone does not suffice. And we're not even getting into Lysander Spooner, there is no treason. We're not even going to go there. We're going to assume we're going to play by their rules. Even by their rules, this is what the deal is. However, when you look at the definitions of sedition and treason, and you look at what the Democrats and what some of the progressive people are trying to do, I think that some of what they're trying to do actually
could it be seditious?
Kind of skirts the line, doesn't it? I love the Lysander Spooner reference too. By the way, that's awesome. I never get somebody that knows who that is.
that was. I was like, when did I agree to this? What is? That's
for those of you guys who are not, for all our libertarian folks out there, anybody looking for a really interesting read to blow your mind about the Constitution, about self-ownership, about consent and consent of the governed, stuff like that, go nerd out on some Lysander Spooner.
But sedition, two of the definitions of sedition I'm reading say forcefully oppose government authority, preventing, hindering, or delaying the execution of any law of the U.S. You mean our constitutional rights? You mean the actual border laws and immigration laws that already exist? 3, the other version had was seize, take, or possess any U.S. property contrary to its laws. You mean Oregon? You mean what is it?
New
Portland?
Mexico?
No. These places where they had what were those? The Chazes. The occupied zones. How was that not sedition?
Oh yeah.
That's
were they brought up on sedition charges?
No, they were not.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so backing up. Okay, let's give it to us again, Eric. Where can our viewers go to support your suit against the state of Vermont for their unconstitutional gun stuff? Give them the website again. Tell them where to go.
So our website is www.gunownersofvermont.org. If you just Google Gun Owners of Vermont, it'll pop it right up. And you click on that, and there's a little bar across the top that says, it's got some links for join us and donate, et cetera, et cetera. And if you follow those links there, you can donate through PayPal, or you can drop us a check in the mail, or come to one of our meetings, or whatever works for you guys. So
all you lazy asses who aren't going to get out there and go to meetings and show up, you can at least give a few bucks to the legal fee.
It adds up.
Come on.
We've already between us and the Federation, we've got jars set up in all the gun shops around the state. We've been hammering the social media and our email list, and we've raised. Between us and the Federation, everybody involved, we're approximately halfway to the $300,000 initial goal of that. So we're actually making really good progress. Some folks there's some folks, some gun shops stepped up with some real big donations. Century Arms kicked in a lot of money. There's been some really good heavy hitters that have stepped up to the plate and helped out. So it's a good thing.
Well, and there's some manufacturers in the state that if they hope to keep their ability to manufacture in the state, they probably ought to donate something too. Let's get this circulated to those folks.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell a little bit. We've just been having a good old time talking about guns, but why don't you tell our viewers before we get too far off the rails, and then we gotta end the show. Tell everybody exactly what your suit is. Like, what are your I don't know what's the right word? accusations, claims,
Okay, so
whatever.
yep. So the official complaint hasn't been filed yet. Actually, it might have been. It's going in any day now.
Okay.
They were finalizing the final complaint, which is about 26, 27 pages long. It's a lot of legal, yada yada. But basically, the lawsuit alleges that the magazine ban from 2018 and the waiting period bill from 2023 are both unconstitutional. There are more gun control laws that have been passed in Vermont that can possibly be litigated further down the road. But as I understand, they see this as kind of the low hanging fruit to get a favorable ruling on under the new Bruin ruling and stuff. So they're going to start with this and see if they can push it through the Circuit Court of Appeals. And the other thing to consider with this is that there are similar lawsuits happening in other parts of the country in different Circuit Court of Appeals. So, for instance, if the suit making its way through the Ninth Circuit out in California makes its way to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court rules on magazine limits, then, it might be a moot point beforehand.
Right.
But the more of these lawsuits that get, pushed is the more chance you have of the Supreme Court taking up the case and it finally getting a favorable ruling on it.
Yep.
And this court is looking to take more cases on guns. Finally, you have, regardless of how you feel about everything else this Supreme Court has done, they're finally doing their job on Second Amendment rights after, a
Praise
century of
God.
ignoring it. So,
Yes.
well, we'll take it.
Yeah. Okay. So fantastic. So basically you're starting out with two of the laws that you guys think or, collectively have decided are the most likely to advance and be upheld. Is there a plan then to go after the next ones? Is there a vision for that down the line? Do we kind of feel like if those get struck down, then that sets precedent for the other ones? Do you know is there a plan?
In a perfect world, and now you're getting into legal stuff, and you remember I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a guy that reads a lot and has an interest in this sort of thing. But
stayed at a Holiday Inn last night,
right? But the more favorable rulings and legal precedent that you get, that helps other issues, similar issues be decided in the future. But the flip side of that is you have a couple of activist judges, one in Connecticut and one in Oregon, who have recently released their own rulings that kind of put a spin on the Bruin decision from last year. I mean, really terribly reasoned, poorly thought out, very obviously trying to kind of take what the Supreme Court said about guns last year and spin it back the other way because they didn't like how it went for them. So, that muddies the waters and lengthens the process and complicates the situation and makes it more expensive for us and et cetera, et cetera. But, the long-term plan is every, favorable ruling you get sets legal precedent, and that helps in the future. And we've seen a ton of them since the Bruin ruling last year, which, if you're familiar with that, changed the way that the courts are even allowed to look at Second Amendment rights. It used to be a means end analysis, and the Supreme Court said, no, it doesn't matter. You're not allowed to use that interest balancing analysis now. And, whether the lower courts listen to them or not is another thing. But, it's,
there are a number, I think it is interesting. There are a number of different laws moving up various states. Where, Benjamin, do you know where the one for the felonies is? Do we remember if we found out the felony one? So there's one, of course, that I've asked about, as I've been very open about. I have a criminal record from 15 years ago, a a felony offense. And so I can't own a gun in Vermont anymore. And there is a court case making its way through the circuit that says if it's a nonviolent felony, you can't restrict someone's rights. Like you have to restore them, or there has to be a means of restoration, or whatever.
Yep.
And it's making its way up to the Supreme Court. So that's one that I'm looking at and watching, of course, because I'm very interested in that.
Sure.
It's like, oh, I did something stupid 20 years ago that was nonviolent and got the worst possible ruling because I was poor and couldn't afford anything other than a public
You
defender.
don't know how many people get caught up in that trap. I mean, I bet I can think of 4 or 5 people I know off the top of my head that is saying, I got one guy that I think he like stole a lawnmower when he was like 20 years old or something. And it was over a certain dollar amount, so it was a felony, right? And so he can't own a hunter rifle. The guy's 50 years old. He's the nicest guy you've ever met in your life. He hasn't been in trouble in 30 years, and he can't own a gun. The other guy
that's
I know
stupid.
ended up on the business end of the law years ago for growing marijuana. Right? Had a few marijuana plants at his house. Got arrested, got a felony, can't own guns. Now you can go right to the store and buy weed now. You think they
I was going to say, now it's legal.
Heck, no,
No,
sir.
absolutely
No,
not.
And
You can't have your case expunged. The governor refuses to look at pardons.
Yep, it doesn't have to. They want as few people having guns as possible. It doesn't, and you're thinking like potheads, for goodness sake. They're potheads running around shooting the place up all the time. Those guys, you gotta better take the guns away from those guys. The only thing they're a threat to is a carton of ice cream in the fridge.
I mean, that's the thing is we're gonna let cartels run the freaking legalized weed, whatever. But if you're a dude,
that's what you talk about, and you don't want to put that tinfoil hat on too hard all the time, but you got to wonder, like, this isn't all by accident. There's no way that they can be this stupid and oblivious and just completely clueless to what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They're trying to disarm the civilian population of the United States is what they're doing, and you'll never convince me otherwise. So
it's a full court. It's a full court press. It is.
Yes.
It does not matter what the reason is. It does not matter what the logic is. We're gonna press full court down the line on everything. And there's other things that have. We're not going to talk about that. There's other things that I've seen. It's off topic. It is contentious. There are things that I've seen where it's the precedent that gets set that matters, and people don't think that matters. It's like, okay, you want to get from point A to point B, and you're going to do that by any means necessary. That means you make whatever argument you have to make. You tell whatever story you have to tell. Great. Once you get to B, there's some other guy that wants to get to F. And guess what?
Yep.
He's going to use that stupid argument or line of logic that you used. Now, if we pass your thing based on what you said, we can't. Only thing you can do is lie right now and say, "Oh, well, there's some reason we can't do it that way." But anybody reasonable is like, "Well, if it was okay to get from A to B, then it's okay to go from B to F." And people don't understand that that's what they're doing. And this is when you talk about compromising. This is where that actually becomes incredibly dangerous. You are setting precedents that people are going to look back at and say, well, why was it okay then? Okay, great. I'm going to use that argument, and there's certain other arguments that are going on right now, discussions that are being had where people are talking about, because I feel a certain way, that means that reality becomes X. And that's awesome for you right now in this moment, when you're a regular person making that argument, even though you know it's bad. But what does that mean for the next person who comes by after you? Maybe they're not as smart as you. Maybe they're not as well-reasoned as you. Maybe they're just freaking crazy. Well, now we're using that same line and standard to apply to them. But that's not how that was ever supposed to go. It's a very dangerous precedent being set, and that's what's happening here.
Well, and so here's the deal, guys. As you know, Benjamin and I are authors of this fantastic book, Reasons to Trust the Government.
Right.
And as you know, there are no reasons to trust the government. And so run out today, get your copy of Reasons to Trust the Government at Amazon for just $9.99.
Yep.
And any sales that we have through the end of September, we will donate the proceeds to Gun Owners of Vermont and the Federation toward the legal fund to fight the state of Vermont. You guys, seriously, it's a great joke gift. It's great to have on your coffee table to get conversation starting, piss off your liberal family members, use as a notebook.
No. You piss off your statist family members.
Yes.
People who believe in the power of the state, federal government, etc., as the ultimate arbiter of truth and justice. I'm not one of those people because they cannot be trusted, any of them. You want as little of their influence in your life as humanly possible. So you'll piss off anybody who's into big government by having a book like that.
I like this guy, man.
This is what I'm saying. So go to Amazon. Speaking of statists, go to Amazon.com.
Unfortunately.
And get your copy today. Seriously, it makes a great notebook. Our good friend Olga, who is the Libertarian Party chair, had brought her copy to the National LP meeting, and it turned a bunch of heads. People thought it was really funny. It's seriously, guys, it's $10 on Amazon. We are going to donate the proceeds for the rest of September to the legal fund to sue the state of Vermont over their unconstitutional gun grabs. So go get your
guys are
copy
awesome.
today.
That's what we do.
Yes, absolutely. And tell everybody again, Eric, where your website is. Where can they go learn more about the suit? Where can they donate? How can they help?
Yep. So it is gunownersofvermont.org. If you just Google Gun Owners of Vermont, bring you right to our website, and there's links right at the top of the page. You can join, become a regular member for about $25 a year, and that gets you on the email list and all that good stuff. Or you can make a separate donation to the Legal Defense Fund, which is money that we use specifically for fighting the state of Vermont when they pass bad laws like this one. So.
I love it. I love it. All right, Eric. Anything, our guest, Eric Davis, Director of Gun Owners of Vermont, is there anything else you want to say, share, or bring up that we have not asked you yet that you want to just make sure you get out to our viewers?
Nothing really off the top of my head, but just that, I think generally speaking, it's important to maintain perspective that, Second Amendment rights gun rights are human rights. You're talking about the right to self-defense and to protect your gift of life, which is, you only get one of those, man. So this is a really important thing. And it's so important that it's the only thing in the Bill of Rights that the founding fathers wrote shall not be infringed on it. That's the only place in the Constitution that wording appears. It's, I know it's got whipped into kind of a political hot topic, frenzied kind of issue, but it's a really important thing, and it's important to maintain perspective and understand, the big picture and why we have these rights and why it's important to maintain them and to keep up the fight and to keep doing the thing. So.
Absolutely.
Amen. Amen. I like it. All right. Any final words from you, Benjamin?
The fact that the government is as large as it is the reason we're having to have all these stupid conversations.
Ooh.
Agree.
Ooh.
Agree.
Ooh.
Yep.
Get out and vote, y'all.
Right.
Get out and vote.
Yeah.
Amen. I like it.
Well, this has been
right,
fun, guys. This is great. So we should do this again sometime.
Heck yeah, Eric. I want to have you on again. Everybody, our guest today has been Eric Davis, Director of Gun Owners of Vermont, suing the state of Vermont over their unconstitutional gun legislation. Eric, we are definitely going to have you on again. Make sure to keep us in the loop with what's going on with the case, and we'll keep keeping it on.
All right. Sounds
All
good,
right,
guys.
boss.
Thanks so much for having us in today.
Thanks, Eric.
Later.
All right. Bye-bye.